Your ears do not deceive you. You have just entered the Cryptid Creator Corner brought to you by your friends at Comic Book Yeti. So without further ado, let's get on to the interview.
Hello and welcome to Comic Book Yeti's Cryptid Creator Corner. I am one of your hosts, Jimmy Gasparo, and I have two guests today, and I think it's their first time on the podcast, and wow, what a first issue. We're going to talk about In Your Skin. It is a new issue that is kind of under the umbrella of Tiny Onion, but I have both the writer and artist on the podcast today, so you're going to learn all about it. And I mean, the best part of this podcast is getting to read stuff in advance. I'm not going to lie. I love talking to creators, but getting to see stuff before anybody else does and getting blown away by it is just amazing. So please welcome to the podcast, Aditya Bidikar and Som. How are the two of you doing today?
Pretty good. It's 9:30 p.m. here. I just got back from London after doing some stuff on Ram and my new book, which was just announced actually today. Yeah, so it's a good time for comics, I feel.
Yeah. Hi,
And Som,
everyone.
how are you doing?
Doing good. I have just been trying to chase headlines on the issue itself. So, yeah, while the podcast is going on, I'll get back to the other issues of In Your Skin. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I saw Aditya. I saw a little bit about. I think you posted something on Instagram that you had been in London for a while, and that we would be hearing more about that. I mean, I think you posted that a week or so ago. So, yeah, very, very exciting stuff. I mean, I've been a fan of yours for a while in terms of your lettering work. When I first got back into comics, and then started working with Comic Book Yeti to review comics, and then when Byron O'Neill started the podcast, lettering was something that I really tried to pay more attention to, because I felt like early on that it wasn't, whether or not in reviews folks didn't talk about it, or letterers didn't get their name on the cover of books, things along those lines. Like, I really felt like letterers were, I was surprised at in terms of how much they were like the unsung heroes of comics. And like the work that you've done and consistently done has been amazing. But I am very excited to see, because I know you've written stuff before. I know you've had a number of shorter comics that you've done, and I was very excited to hear that you were going to be involved in the series. I was very excited to hear that Psalm was going to be working on it. I was a big fan. I interviewed Philip Kennedy Johnson on the podcast and was a big fan of Crocodile Black. Psalm, I thought your work on that was amazing, and I just thought, the two of you in this comic that is about Bollywood, about body horror. I thought it was going to be great. And reading issue one, happy to report to listeners, I was right.
Hmm.
And it's such a great first issue, and also it's something that it's you know a couple of things I liked about it. Body horror, out of all the types of horror, body horror freaks me out the most. I can deal with just about anything, but body horror really disturbs me, and body horror really done well, which it is in this first issue, makes me very uncomfortable. And I like to be uncomfortable sometimes. I feel like it's necessary. And the other thing is, I'm not very familiar with Bollywood. It's not anything I was like ever exposed to, and I love being exposed to new things. I don't know much about India. I don't know much about body horror, but I want to learn, and I want to see this little glimpse of it through this really incredible comic. So, with all of that being said, Aditya, do you want to start? Kind of tell listeners a little bit about what In Your Skin is about. I know it's a story you've been working on for, or at least had it in your head for a number of years.
Yeah, so In Your Skin is about Priyanka, who is sort of a Bollywood Uber fan. She has been obsessing over Aisha Sen's movies for a long time, and she's kind of obsessing over it in that very Indian way where you learn the dialogues, you learn the dances, and kind of imitate the actress, and so on. And she gets an opportunity to meet Aisha at one point of time, and something goes wrong with that. And then when Aisha decides to retire, Priyanka decides that it's her time in the spotlight. And the story is all about how we get there and what are the consequences.
With all of that in mind, and you're putting together, the outline for the series. What were the, without giving too much away, what were really the elements that you felt were important that like had to be included in the first issue to kind of inform Priyanka's character?
So the story's gone through a lot of iterations, as stories do, like over the years. The first time I had the story in my head was before the pandemic. And at the time, it was all about fandom, like the idea of what a fan is. It's evolved from that a little bit because I wanted to see both aspects of this peculiar idea that humans have, which is celebrity, which is this idea that for some reason, some one person does something well and therefore like other people look up to them. And it's a very strange thing. And the first issue is to a large degree getting into the psychology of somebody who thinks like that and what might lead them to think like that. What does their life look like? And what leads them to take certain decisions. Essentially.
Yeah. Psalm, I really liked how the issue opened up. Just to tell listeners a little bit, because we see the first issue open up, and it's almost like this kind of um dance the character is going through as we see, clips on TV of others being interviewed about Ayesha. And I was just kind of curious in terms of your inspiration to kind of like weave all of that through. Because you have the inset panels for like the interview, but the rest of it is kind of like flowing, like floating through. I was just kind of curious in terms of your inspiration to kind of lay it all out like that. And working, leaving space for the colorists to kind of come in and do their thing, because I really feel like it's it's very beautiful, but the the coloring and like the body position, um it starts to give a hint of something being wrong. It's almost like an unnatural pose at time through the dance, and I was very interested by that. Like right away, that kind of grabbed me looking at the posture in particular.
So we can't hear you.
Yeah. First of all, credits to BD, because I think he was the one who was very clear as to how these moments need to be projected. So we were very sure, like after the discussion that I had with them, we were very sure that these were going to be in a certain painterly style, which is more dreamy, which is more surreal. And that's possibly the reason why you see that sort of a treatment. When it comes to the exact pose, we were trying a lot of. Uh, the idea was that all of these, like the Bollywood actresses that we are kind of referring to, belong to a certain era where song and dance, and if you are remotely aware of Bollywood, you will realize that song and dance is almost as integral and sometimes more than the actual plot of the story. Like there are cases where song and dance, like good songs, have made a film hit more than the plot of the story. And these dances are very iconic in there. Like the poses are very iconic. And we were very sure that we wanted to create those iconic moments uh, for this particular page. And we went through a lot of iterations. I think the first page itself, I did like 3 or 4 of them.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
yeah, and I was like just belting it out just to check whether any of these work. And we kind of finally froze on the one that, like, not froze, but we kind of decided to go with the one that is in the final book. And even the body horror bit, it was meant to be a little creepy in that sense. Uh, like in some ways, it's kind of a, I don't know if it is a spoiler or not, but it's kind of a forebearer of what is to be expected in
Okay. Yeah.
the comic, you know.
Yeah.
So Aisha kind of slowly, creepily taking over. Uh, not take, but sorry, Priyanka kind of and getting entangled into this idea of what Aisha is. and Aisha trying to get away from it, but still both of them kind of fusing into one entity, that sort of a thing.
Right.
So
Right.
Yeah,
In
that
terms of
was sorry. Like
no,
basically,
go
I
ahead.
kind of knew that a lot of issue one is going to be like dramatic in the sense of it's going to sit with characters. You're gonna see them talk. You're gonna see them interact with each other and figure out their relationships. So I did want um, some of the first sequence to hint at what's going to happen, and kind of give people something to come back to after they've read issue one to kind of see what the first few pages might have meant. And by the way, Som is kind of underplaying how much research he did for those dances. Like we would be talking and he'd be playing different songs from Bollywood movies, and he'd be like, okay, this actress and this particular song, this particular choreographer. Like we went through a lot of those to kind of nail down the dance poses. So like, I mean, that's the great thing about working with somebody like Som is that if I put in like X amount of work, I know he's going to put in like 5x the amount of work in figuring that thing out.
I think that's also the fun bit of it, because when the writer kind of gives you a lot of fodder, then there are so many directions you can take that. You can take the material and you can go. And coming back to one of the aspects that you said about the panels with the interviews. So how, like, the whole page was supposed to be surreal, and throughout we were thinking how can I integrate this moment of surreal in the interview shots as well. And if you closely notice, you'll realize that, and these are iconic places in Bombay. So there are Bollywood actresses on the walls whose eyes are following this woman. So if you go back to the issue, you will notice that. So that kind of creepily adds to the idea of this page as well.
Yeah, I really I mean I really love the opening of this. I mean, I think it sets the stage, really, really well. Um I mean there were a ton of things I really liked about this. Also as as someone in my 40s who probably should stick to wearing shirts like I have one now with a collar, but I do like graphic tees. Not Jaquette, if that's how you say his
Yeah,
name. I love his first T-shirt. I think says like I saw, I came, I left early. I
yeah,
really liked it. Just made me kind of laugh and there's a nice little character moment. I'm like, oh, okay, here's a young guy. This is kind of like his deal with these graphic tees and maybe wearing them ironically, maybe not. I thought very very interesting character.
That was all Som, by the way. Like he was just he sent me a list of all these graphic tees that he wanted to do that we often see on like young men in India,
yeah,
where again we are not always sure whether they're wearing them ironically or not. And like he was like, "Can I do them?" And we went through the list and we were like, "Okay, these five work well, so let's do them."
yeah.
It's too funny. Well, I like that one, and then there's another one later on I like too. I was really paying attention to that in terms of his character, but yeah, I mean, you've set up with the issue so far. I mean, the first issue, you've set up a very interesting dynamic for Priyanka with her relationship to Ayesha, her relationship to Najaket, her relationship to her mother. I think I said it right before we started recording, but the scene with Priyanka and her mom was rough. I mean, in terms of I thought so. Um, you know, it- yeah, her mother has yeah, definite opinions about what Priyanka should be doing with her life and is not happy about them. They kind of get into it a little bit at a diner. I mean, was it important to have that type of like another stressor in Priyanka's life in terms of that relationship with her mom? Or, I mean, culturally, is that, you know, um, I don't want to say like, are all Indian mothers mean? Like, there's like cultural stereotypes for things. Like, I'm Italian and like all Italian grandmothers yell. Like, I don't know if that like was it just important because it was something like culturally, or was it important because another like stressor in Priyanka's life?
Well, it's definitely an important theme. Like I think we pared issue one down to essentially like the scenes that really needed to be there. Like I think the original version of issue 1 was, I think, like 8 pages more than this, and we kind of pruned it down to like, okay, here's the stuff that absolutely needs to be there to kind of show who this person is, where she came from, and so on. But also, like, we don't want to spoon feed. Like I I dislike exposition in writing. Like I would rather um you see a character interacting with another character, and like when you see the same person interacting with like 3 different people in 3 different ways, that tells you something about them. So that
Sure.
was partly where the theme came from, I would say. But it's also like I would definitely not say that all Indian mothers are like
No,
Priyanka's mother.
I,
Um,
of course not. I'm being facetious. I hope everyone knows that I'm not passing
yeah.
judgment on
Yeah, but
Indian mothers.
I would still say that a lot of Indians would identify that kind of person,
Okay.
because I do think there's something that comes with um, India's status as like um, a nation that's still sort of dealing with patriarchy in some ways. Like we're still kind of figuring out where we stand. India is not one thing. India is like several different things. So like
Yeah.
this kind of person who like is about like, let's say, 50, 55 years old, and has gone through certain things in life and gotten to where she is, and therefore believes she's owed certain things, and particularly by the next generation, is not so rare. Like this is not like you would meet this kind of person if you stayed
Yeah.
here long enough.
Besides, when you
Yeah,
have a
I would
population of like, sorry, but when you
no
have a population,
sorry, just saying more than that about her specifically might spoil certain things, so I won't say that.
Yeah.
But
No.
yeah, like
Yeah.
that's what I wanted to say. Yeah.
yeah.
So
Okay. Okay.
Mine was just a joke. When you have a population of like 1.4 billion people, the possibility of every shade is quite high, you know? So there's
Oh,
every kind
sure.
of parent
Yeah.
available. So yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean it's just interesting, like that scene in particular, because it's comic books, and you both know you only have limited space to kind of like inform your reader about the psychology or the type of person in terms of your main characters, and when you strip everything down, and show that relationship with several individuals to kind of build the profile of who this person was. It was interesting to me, um, kind of, how early that scene showed up because we're still getting to know Priyanka, and yeah, that scene really packs a punch, I thought, in terms of informing her character. I just thought it was very interesting and very, very interesting, and then
thank you.
the comic goes on, from there. I was curious in terms of, like, the working with, uh, Tiny Onion, and then I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're working with Tiny Onion, the book's being published by Image,
Yeah.
and so what has that been like in terms of, working under the umbrella of Tiny Onion?
I mean, it's honestly been wonderful. This is a book that I was planning to do before Tiny Onion offered me the AIR contract, like the artist in residence contract. And what that meant is that firstly, I could get an artist like Som, because I don't know if I could have afforded his work, if I was doing this by myself. So Tiny Onion essentially like offered me a budget, and I got to work with Eric as an editor, Eric Harburn, who's one of the absolute best editors in the business. He came with the deal essentially, and um, I find like this is my first full length project. Like I've done shorter comics before this, but uh, getting to do my first full length project with a team that is as experienced as the Tiny Onion team, like in terms of editorial, in terms of design, production, marketing. Like I'm getting to work with all of these people who are going to put their efforts into creating the best book possible and promoting it as well as possible. Is essentially like it's a privilege. Like honestly, I don't know. Like I don't know how I would have done this book without all of these people involved, because having jumped into it, I realized that, okay, you know what? It's not just about the writing. It's about, there are so many things involved in making a comic book and getting it to the market that I don't know if I was prepared for entirely. And having that kind of backup and support has been incredible. And I'm going to take this learning kind of with me elsewhere. And secondly, I feel like just having Eric, um, you know, kind of giving me feedback on the script, giving us feedback on the artwork, and kind of being there for everything we might need on a day-to-day basis has just made this go much faster. Like if I was, I think if I was
Yeah.
doing this by myself, I still wouldn't have an artist involved. I'd probably still be working on the first script, because uh, like Eric just reminding me that, hey, we need to get this done. We need to
Yeah.
figure this out, because I think as a every writer procrastinates a lot, and with your first book, you end up procrastinating a lot more. So, I mean, you could say that without Tynion, and I don't know if this book was happening in the first place.
Okay. It's interesting to hear you say that, like as many projects as you've been involved in as a letterer, but when you're when you're a writer and there's still, and it is amazing. Like there's still so many things to learn. Like I did a graphic novel. I have a graphic novel, an all ages graphic novel coming out next month, and it's my first graphic novel. It's the longest thing I've written, and I've done this podcast. I've talked to plenty of creators, but when you actually start to go through the process of everything involved, you're like, oh, I thought I understood. I
Yeah.
did not.
Yeah.
It's a little bit, like
Absolutely.
that.
And
I think
what
I
I
have
feel,
way more admiration for everybody that I've seen doing an image book, like somebody like Ram, somebody like James before Tiny and was involved. All of these people, I'm like, my admiration for these people has gone through the stratosphere at this point.
it's like a rabbit hole, right? And with art writers as well as artists, I think, like both of us, both me and Bidikar have a very interesting dynamics. We are very frantic in, we can do this, we can do that, that sort of a thing. And while while that is important to understand the scope of the comic book, you need the right kind of, calming agent in the mix to kind of pull you out when you are getting into that vicious rabbit hole, because that rabbit hole goes, I don't know, there's no end to it. You can keep digging it, you know. So yeah, Eric was like a gift on the project.
Yeah.
Oh,
Me
that's
and
awesome
Som,
to hear.
without Eric, would have probably still been working on the first page, like just
Yeah,
doing more and more versions of us.
yeah, yeah. Of her dancing and
Uh,
yeah.
Um,
exactly.
so,
Um,
uh, just to talk a little bit of, more about your work in it, not just the body horror aspects of it, which I'm sure I'm sure there's going to be more as issues progress, but one of the things I thought you do really well is your like close up facial expressions. Like you really capture something about, these characters. We talked a no, there's we talked about it a little bit before, but there is a kind of a scene in the middle of the book. Let's kind of get steamy, but even before and after that, like just when you have um a Nachakет kind of interacting with some people on the street, he goes to get he goes to get something made up from somebody in a stand, and then even after that, with Priyanka, you know, uh, when there's the possibility of her meeting this person she's been like obsessing over, Ayesha. Like you really like get in close, and your facial expressions are so good. They convey so much. And that's one of the things I love about comics, cuz you'd have a script and you can give them to a bunch of different artists and they're going to come up with some different paneling, some different expressions, but you really kind of dig into it. And I think you go to some places where some of your I hope this comes across the right way. I'm trying to make this I hope this sounds complimentary, but some of your facial expressions are not like pretty in terms of what you would think of like a symmetrical face, but they're very realistic and they always seem to be in service of the story. I mean, especially as someone who's done this podcast with a video component, and Byron sometimes put it on YouTube. I cannot watch it because you can pause it at a million different places. And this, right here is doing something wacky. But you really get in there and give us something that feels real, that feels kind of like visceral. I was just hoping you could maybe talk to listeners a little bit more about your approach when you have to do close-ups and facial acting.
Sure. First of all, thank you for the compliment. I do take it as a compliment. Uh, I can't stress enough that me as a comic book artist, like I wait for those moments where there are close-ups, because comic is a certain size, the wider shots, the faces are drawn in a certain size. So there is not much room because the brush size, everything, all of that is limited, right? So there's only limited room in terms of how much you can draw. But it's on those closer panels that you can really, like, get to the subtleties and the nuances, which I like exploring a lot, I think. And one of the things that when BD and I were kind of discussing this, one of the things that we realized is we don't want the characters to look flattering all the time. Like one of the things that BD had suggested, and I'm not really sure if I think I've tried it in one of the panels, but I might do it again, is when you take up angles which don't obviously make them look pretty, like the double chin kind of pops up and all of that.
Right.
And you don't see that enough in comics, and that's one of the reasons why I think partly it is also inspired by the fact that I serve the film industry here, and a lot of my drawing is storyboards, and I visualize in terms of transitions and cuts and all of that. So the 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 close-ups are always the dramatic close-ups. So when I have to draw storyboards, I always that needs a moment. So I have to nail the expression just right for the actor or anybody else to kind of understand the mood of the panel, of the frame, in which I kind of translate to the comic book here as well. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I hope that answers the question. Yeah.
Oh, no, no, it definitely does. I appreciate that, and I thought it worked, really well in this comic. I just thought some of the expressions in particular were very interesting and really served the story. And yeah, I mean, um, like I said, I love the first issue, and you're working with I think it is it Francesco
Francisco.
Yeah, Francesco.
Segala is
Yes.
the colorist, and yeah, and you also have some great variant cover artists as well. I think I saw
Yeah.
one by Maria Lovett by Tula Lotte, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. Which is always kind of fun, and both of them are tremendous. Yeah, so there's so much great stuff in terms of this first issue and the series. I'm kind of curious, just because I've not been exposed, growing up in the States here, to Bollywood. What is kind of the two of you in terms of your relationships to that? Is like are there particular things in Bollywood that you like? Was there like a Western film influence? Like, what is kind of your experience with Bollywood kind of film and culture?
Yeah. Uh, See, the relationship keeps evolving over time. Obviously, now that I'm part of that industry as well, that's a different mix. And you know, uh, b- but yeah, when I was growing up, Bollywood always was a part of our lives. We grew up to, and back by then, Bollywood had always, like, it had achieved that sort of aspirational quality to it. Like the superstars were, had elevated themselves from the idea of being an actor to a scene to being the superstar. Like they 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 are the same image in every film, and it is that aspirational quality to which that people kind of relate to. Like
Okay.
I don't know if it makes sense in any way. Like there is always this kind of an actor who's like the angry young man, and he'll always beat up the goons by the end of the film. So
Okay.
that, yeah, and they're typecasted sometimes, but at the same time, there is always a romantic hero who will keep doing these romantic films, and he has a fan following of those. So so growing up, obviously, we were kind of, at least I was sucked into that as well. I had that aspirational element to it as well. Like I always wanted to be a Shah Rukh Khan or an Amir Khan and all of that. My looks betrayed me. That's a different thing. But yeah, but but over when you get serious about films, then and you start working about films, you also kind of understand the kind of attention to detail that some films put in, and that was like in some Bollywood films, they will explore certain nook and corners of Bombay, and that was something that I wanted to bring in Your Skin as well. So I wanted to. It's not it's not always that you get a chance to explore your city that you live in a comic book and present it to the world. So obviously there are the flattering aspects of Mumbai that you would want to show off, but at the same time there are these what constitutes the real Bombay. Like you get into those hidden uh, gullies, as in hidden streets, nooks, hole in the wall sort of places. Uh, and At this point of time, Bollywood is more of a. It is. It has always been there has always been an element of entertainment. So, uh, it despite everything, it'll always stay a part of our lives because whenever we want to go watch a movie, we are not really looking for uh more. I mean, saying this from a very lay audience sort of a point of view, not the informed, because there is an element of that in me as well. So I have to kind of keep that aside. The people who are
Okay.
more informed about films and who understand film theory and all of that. So I'm keeping that bit aside. But when we go to watch Bollywood films, we are going there for all the. There's a term that is used in India called masala, which is you have action, you have romance, you have all of those fit into one 2.5, 3 hour film. And there's comedy, there is, you know, uh, heroes jumping from one building to the other, setting things on fire, that sort of a thing. So, so that is still there. And I kind of wanted to bring that childlike association to films that I had to this comic as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Oh no, I love that. That's a great answer. Thank you, Som.
Pleasure, pleasure.
So my point of view on this is kind of almost the opposite, because
Okay.
the moment, like I remember having a conversation with my dad once when I was like 4 or 5, and he told me like, they worship those people, right? And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, these people who are on screen, um, there are people who like literally deify them and worship them. And my confusion was that, like, I remember this is gonna sound absurd, but I genuinely believed this when I was 3 or 4, which is that I thought they were all action figures because I couldn't believe that people would choose to do something somebody else told them to do. Right? Like an actor is somebody who, like, the director tells them what to do and stuff, and I just couldn't believe that real people did that. So I thought they were action figures. And then my dad is telling me, like, no, 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 they're not just people. They're like kind of up there, like they're considered up there. And that dissonance is something I've carried throughout my life, where on one level, I kind of just don't understand why somebody would like literally worship them, or like, we have these celebrity impersonators, who sometimes even are found outside the celebrity's house. So, like, let's say you can't see the celebrity, you can get a photo taken with one of the impersonators. Then, like, the way that Bollywood music essentially forms the soundtrack of India, like all those things I've observed as if I'm sitting outside in some ways. But I do get it because whenever my family gets together, we will not be watching like a Marvel movie. We will not be watching like a drama. We will be watching a Bollywood movie. Like we will be watching that
Okay.
masala, as he said, because that's got something to make everybody happy. Right. And I can find the pleasure in that as well. Like I actually do like the movies. It's like, even though I'm skeptical of the culture around it, I do enjoy the films. I enjoy the fact that you can have a slapstick sequence in one moment, and you can have like the biggest tearjerker of a sequence like 2 minutes later. That's something that Bollywood can do, which there's a certain like suspension of disbelief that comes with watching a Bollywood movie that allows for that. And I think the world has gotten to experience this with like some Telugu movies like RRR or something like that. But
Sure.
this has been like the industry, or like all movies like that are like here are were like that. And so I drifted away from that, and then I came back when Bollywood started making movies that I liked, like which is somebody like Anurag Kashyap or Vishal Bharadwaj. They were making like grittier crime movies. They were telling stories that resonated with real people. They wouldn't have songs like they wouldn't have people bursting into songs and stuff like that. That's when like Bollywood kind of got me back, and I started observing the phenomenon. I started looking at what celebrity had become by that point. You can also see like around 2010, 2015, like the phenomenon of internet celebrity coming up and sort of shaking this idea of the Bollywood star on a pedestal, and so on. Like that's been my experience of Bollywood. So like it's always been about watching this thing from the outside and trying to make sense of it. Um, but and yet it does it does form the soundtrack of my own life. Like when I am down, I will not listen to English music. I will listen to
Yeah.
Bollywood music.
Yeah.
I've got a massive playlist of Bollywood that I play whenever I'm like, let's say I'm driving out somewhere, I'll be playing that.
Yeah.
So despite sort of being above it all, as Som was saying
Yeah.
earlier,
It's
like
home food.
it's still completely, yeah, absolutely, it's soul food. Like
Yeah.
it's like you can't do without it, honestly.
Yeah.
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 Soam, is there like is there a Bollywood soundtrack to In Your Skin?
I mean, it always plays in my head. So whenever I'm doing
Okay.
it, it kind of subconsciously keeps playing. I can't avoid it. I mean, whenever I'm drawing, actually, there is some piece of music or the other that I kind of put to play to kind of get the energy of the panel that I want. So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Uh, really quickly, one of the other things I wanted to ask in terms of the two of you both getting, into comics. What was it like growing up in India in terms of like the comic scene? Like what were your exposure to comics? Were there things, like was it Indian comics? Was it, manga? Was it Western comics? Was did you not get into comics until later? Like what was your exposure to it? I'm just kind of curious.
Do you want to take that first,
Uh,
or should
okay.
I?
Yeah, sure. So my introduction to comics was very early, and it was all Indian comics. So there is in the northern part of India where I hail from, there was this publisher called Raj Comics, and they had come up with a series of uh, Indian superheroes, but they were all inspired by the West. Yeah. So, but they were quite original in their own right. So they used to take up contemporary Indian issues, and the superpowers were quite unique. Like there was this superhero called Nagraj, and he's kind of, the analogy would be, say, Spider-Man, but instead of spider webs, he used to release snakes, and those snakes would intertwine and make like ropes, and he could swing around and do all of that, and is immune to poison, and he can't be killed that way, and all of that kind of shit. Not shit. Absolutely love it. So yeah, but uh, there's one particular superhero called Doga, which was like the dark vigilante, sort of a Batman analog to the Indian comic books, which kind of got me into the idea of comics. It was drawn by this guy called Manu, uh, and it was his drawings which were kind of the benchmark for me to kind of copy from. I still have some of the comic books that he had done, and I used to copy from them, and that is how my love for comics started. I discovered Batman much later. uh, I think I was maybe 15 or 16 when I discovered Batman, and obviously the production values were much better for all the DC and the Marvel comics. But this was kind of my intro. But in India, comics was uh, even in the West. I think comics started as a very inexpensive medium. It was supposed to be it was not the highbrow literature. It was kind
Yeah, it
of
was
which
like
you can,
something you could read and throw away. It
yeah,
was, you know.
throw away, that sort of a thing. So even in India, it was in a similar sort of a state. But you have to understand that because India was still, like, globalization came in much later, around the 90s, and these comics were already being circulated from the late 80s, if I'm not wrong. So, but these comics were even cheaper, for the lack of a, like, less expensive. They were in today's day and age, they will be, say, 25 cents a comic, that sort of a thing. 10 cents, 25 cents. You could just grab them and read them. And some of the stores used to give them out on rent. So you read the comic book and give it back, and you get you pay a very small fee for that. So
Okay.
that was, yeah, that was a very popular culture where I hail from. And that
Okay.
was my kind of initiation into the world of comics. And uh, I've always been fascinated by this medium, purely because it's, you know uh, writing and visuals drawn together, and you sit with each drawing, spend more time to it. I don't think any other medium allows that much. Illustrated books have moments, but these are in sequence, and they kind of lead you through the story, hand hold you through the story, where you can decide the amount of time that you're going to spend with each moment. So yeah, it has always been something very close to my heart.
Okay. I want to look up more. Like I'm not familiar with Raj Comics, but I like uh I like the idea of the guy that Nagraj who
Yeah,
shoots snakes and is
Yeah.
he's
immune to
awesome.
poison. I
Yeah,
looked it up real quick. Yeah, Doga
yeah,
Parmanu.
Parmanu. Yeah, yeah,
Oh, Parmanu can split into atoms and
yeah, yeah,
fly from one place to another and reduce or increase his own size. So,
yeah, yeah.
Just like
all right,
somebody we
Raj
know from
Comics.
DC Comics, possibly.
Yes, yes. So all of these are inspired, but they had their own
Yeah.
unique ways to kind of do it. So yeah,
Yeah.
Oh,
By the
that's
way, I
awesome.
actually got to work with Manu for a long time.
yeah.
So I used to work for this company called Graphic India, and Manu, whose name
Was
is
doing one
Edison
of them.
George.
Edison George. Yeah.
Exactly. Like he used to work for us, and I was thrilled to find out that the great Manu was working in our comic book company. Yeah.
He's
But
like
yeah,
the
I
okay.
grew up with. Sorry.
Sorry, this one last anecdote. For the lack of a
Yeah.
better comparison, he's like the Jim Lee of, like, Indian comics, at least for me. Like, if there is one original that you would want to own, is, for me, it's Edison George's. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I read the same comics that he did. So I remember we used to get Raj Comics at train stations. So every time we would take a trip from Pune to Mumbai, I would make my dad like buy me one. And I again grew up with all of these Nagraj, Super Commando Dhruv, who
Dhruv.
was
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a powerless man with a motorbike who was a circus act at some point of time. And like a lot of these storylines were like later I realized ripped off from a lot of DC and Marvel comics. But that didn't spoil anything for us, I think. And I kind of I read them through my teenage because we couldn't really find Superman. Like I mean, I didn't know where to find American comics in India, and then um, like I think I was 19 or 20, and I was in this library where I was reading an issue of Sight and Sound, which is a British film magazine, and they had one of
Yeah.
those comics are not for kids anymore articles like Biff Bam Pow kind of thing, and there were a bunch of comics mentioned in that, and I just made a list of all of them. Like so, there was Watchmen, Uncle Sam, Sin City, The Dark Knight Returns, etc., etc., and I just made a list of them and I went through all of them, and that was how I like as an adult got into American comics. Like after that, I realized that this is the medium in which I want to make my bones. Uh, you know, like before that, it
Yeah.
was just an entertainment medium, but after that, it kind of was okay. I understand this language. I want to pursue this, and I want to write and later letter comics. You know, so for me, it
Awesome.
was kind of later, I would say, but it was the same comics essentially.
Yeah. Has like the kind of the Indian comic scene gone through similar transitions to like the Western comic scene in terms of grittier comics in the 90s, through the 2000s? Or Like, what has there been a transition with like Raj Comics and other comic publishers?
So I believe Raj Comics is still publishing, but we kind of had our own comics bust when, like, one of the distributor was essentially, and like there was one
Okay.
distributor that kind of took over, and a lot of comics companies went bust around that time. So we didn't end up having our own comics boom, partly because of that. But after the 90s, so early 2000s and stuff, people started making their own graphic novels, and people who had grown up reading DC and Marvel comics and Raj Comics and all these other comics started making their own comics. So you do have I would say, a thriving comics scene in India, if not an industry exactly. Like there are people making comics, there are people making some great comics. We have some book publishers who publish graphic novels and so on. But I don't know if I'd call it a full blown industry.
Okay. All right. That's fair. Well, so I don't want to. I'll talk about comics and In Your Skin like all day. So I know that's not possible. But
We can
before I
take a little more time if you like.
okay. Well, no. Before I let you all go, though, uh, it's tough to talk about something like this, without giving like too much away. Um, but I had mentioned earlier in terms of like my experience with body horror. I've it makes me the most uncomfortable out of any type of horror book, but I find they're some of the most interesting and compelling stories. Probably one of the reasons I really loved In Your Skin. Like I love some of the work that recently, like Zach Thompson and Hayden Sherman did with Into the Unbeing, which has elements of body horror in it. I think was very good. Um, and so I'm kind of interested in terms of the two of you, horror generally. Is there something in particular about how body horror works to tell this story, or are there other types of horror that kind of affect you, more? Um, just kind of curious about your, the horror aspects of it all.
Shall I go first?
Yeah. Go on.
Sure.
So, David Cronenberg is a very early influence for me. I watched The Fly at 9 years of age, which is almost certainly too young, but it blew my mind, and
Okay.
I was obsessed with horror and body horror after that.
Yeah,
The funny
that'll
thing
do
is
it.
for me, exactly, like you start with the best, like where are you gonna go?
Yeah.
Um, but the funny thing about body horror for me is that it's rarely genuinely like horrifying. Um, when I watch a body horror movie, and most of the time I'm grinning because I'm trying to figure out how they did the practical effect. Like I'm kind of
Okay.
I just marvel at the thing that they decided to do, like at the ideas and so on. Like I remember I watched Julia Ducournau's Titan with a friend, and like the friend was horrified, and I was just like, I had this massive smile on my face the whole way through. And so that's kind of how I relate to body horror. It's a tool to 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 tell stories that you can't in any other genre. Like there's something that we can do here, for example, with the body horror element that no other kind of story would allow us to do. And you're going to see much more of that in issues 2 and 3, because I still wanted to ease people into the body horror aspect of it. Like I kind of wanted to um, get you invested in the characters before like everything kind of falls apart in literal
Sure.
terms. But I feel like in Cronenberg's movies and Julia Ducournau's movies, or even like with something like The Substance or like Satoshi Kon, uh, these are things that allow you to say things about identity, about what the human body is. They allow you to engage with the human animal on a level that drama necessarily wouldn't. So you can kind of get to the bottom of things on a philosophical level with body horror in a way that I feel you can't with even other kinds of horror sometimes. So it allows you to reach something very fundamental, and that's I think why I love body horror in the first place.
Okay.
Yeah. For
Som?
me, I think, yeah. For me, I think body horror was more of an organic evolution, and I was just lucky that In Your Skin kind of picked me. So, like when you graduate from arts or whatever film school, you are this pretentious little brat who's like, want to talk about the difficult things in the world, and but you are doing it in a small sitting, casually sipping your coffee in a small cafe. You are kind of drawing that, and that is how my evolution happened. That I was drawing, and you want to talk about violence, want to talk about all of these bigger injustices in the world. I don't know, sorry, but what ended up happening for me was that there was a certain sense of boredom that came in while drawing in cafes, because I was drawing the same thing over and over again. And then I started to pick and choose my subjects as to how I would draw them, with, say, a twisted arm, or what if I squeeze the face in a certain way? What would happen? How would I, bend the spine or twist the spine in a certain way where, like, take the body to uncomfortable positions which otherwise you can't imagine. And that is how essentially my evolution into this idea of body horror came. And as I went along, I was picking my artists as well. The likes of Terada Katsuya, Junji Ito, all of them are influences. Some of the ones that BD has already mentioned. Cronenberg in films becomes like the go-to for all kinds of body horror. So yeah, I mean, for me, it was more of an organic evolution, and I was just lucky that In Your Skin kind of was offered.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I just think that the pairing of the two of you with the rest of the creative team, I mean, you've really created something special with this issue. I mean, I imagine that it's going to do really well. I mean, I hope it does. I don't want to say it and
I
jinx
hope so.
anything, but I just think that it's so good. I can't express this enough to listeners. Like, even if body horror is not your thing, it's just very interesting in terms of what it's saying about, celebrity obsession, but also you're getting a perspective that maybe we don't always get in Western comics, in terms of we have writer and artist, like, from India. It's not something that we, see in a ton of Western comics. And I always find that interesting. Like, there's a bunch of people who, look like me, who are making comics, and they're making like great comics, but the stuff that makes me like, that I really not necessarily always like learn from, but feel something or see a different perspective, or, how somebody very, very different from me, who grew up in another part of the world, relates to the world and sees it, but we both love this medium. We both love comics. Like, that's kind of fascinating to me, and I can't get enough of it. I can't get enough of seeing how somebody else sees the world, how they approach their work, how they tell stories. Um, I so on that level as well. Just I think In Your Skin is just a fantastic comic. So,
Thank you. Thank
and
you.
Thank you.
I I really appreciate the two of you coming on the podcast today.
Oh, this
So
was
yeah,
fun.
thank
Yeah.
you.
It was an absolute
Yeah,
pleasure. Yeah.
thank you very much. I'm a big fan of both of yours. And yeah, listeners, I mean, you could go into your comic shop and throw a stone, and you're probably going to hit a comic that did a letter. But if you need recommendations, let me know. I'll give you plenty of them. And if you haven't read Crocodile Black, which Som worked on with Philip Kennedy Johnson, I thought that was a tremendous issue, and I think it got a little bit slept on. And I thought it was very good. His artwork's incredible in it, but. Yeah, Aditya Bidikar, Som, thank you both very much for coming on the podcast today. Listeners, it's In Your Skin through Tiny Onion and Image. It's going to be out April 22nd. The best thing to do is let your shop know that you want a copy of it, because the shops have to get their orders in, and that's, that's an important thing in terms of the orders. And I think this is a really special comic. So yeah, thank you both very much for coming on. Listeners, make sure you rate and review us. Do the things they tell you to do about podcasts. It does help. You can find me on Blue Sky and TikTok. Let me know what it is you're reading, especially if you pick up In Your Skin. I want to know what you thought, because I just think it's a fantastic first issue. So again, thank you both so much. Thank you, listeners, for listening. I'll see you next time. Good night.